So I will tell you that my grandpa was an Army recruiter. And so my mom was a single parent. We lived with my grandparents. So I grew up knowing military blood.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the day that I met him, my grandpa was so happy. Just like I brought him home and he was so proud, just like over the moon, like another military man.
Military.
So-
man, yeah.
You're listening to the Favorite Marriage Podcast, a place where you and your spouse can experience God's favor on your forever. Join us as we explore relevant topics and provide practical tools for your marriage toolbox. Enjoy this week's episode of The Favorite Marriage.
Hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of the Favorite Marriage Podcast. We are your hosts, Monty and Jeannine Mora. And this is your podcast for couples who want to put tools into their marriage toolbox. And so we're glad you're tuning in to this episode. We're going to be talking about something very special and very dear to our hearts, and that is the focus on military marriages. And this is an episode we've been wanting to do for a very long time. Many people know that we live here in the city of Colorado Springs, where we house over 90,000 veterans. And so we felt it'd be appropriate to talk about this very important topic on how do you navigate a marriage while serving within the military. And so we have some very special guests with us today who are going to be talking with us. And we have Mr. Tye and Lisa Taylor. And you're going to be hearing more of their story, more of their journey in just here in a bit. And so, Jeannie, what are your immediate thoughts when we talk about military marriages? I know we've done that ministry for many years here. What comes to your mind when it comes to marriages and the military?
Well, because I'm in school, in the academic, and where I see the students and I see the children of military families, there is a lot that goes on in a military home. And I think it's important that every military home has a foundation in order to, I guess, provide that stability for students. So I see the children's end, what children go through in a military home, in deployment, when parents return, the anxiety that they get before a deployment. And I know there's all these different types of military models, I guess you can say. And I know that Tye and Lisa have a unique one that they're going to share about today. But I think it's important that we let our audience know how we know Tye and Lisa Taylor.
Yeah, so we serve together in marriage ministry at our
Yes.
local church, at Restoration Church here in Colorado Springs. And they are one of our co-leaders who lead a marriage class. And they have a special forte when it comes to marriages in the military, because as you hear their story, you're going to see why. And so let's go ahead and introduce our beautiful guests, Tye and Lisa. It's great to have you guys on the show today.
All right, yeah. Thanks for having us. I'm Tye Taylor, so I'm the military member. I have been in the Air Force about a little over 34, or actually just almost 34 years. And we've been married for almost 29 of that. So many deployments, many absences, and so hoping to share some information there.
Yeah, for sure. How did you guys meet? What was the hookup story here?
Right.
You need to share that? Okay. So we met in New Mexico. Tye was stationed at Holloman Air Force Base, and I was a senior in high school. And so it was a classic blind date story back in the
Really?
day. Yep. A friend of his was dating a friend of mine, and they tried for weeks to get us to meet. And, so in a military town there anyway, we called them GIs back then. They had a reputation, right? And I was a stuck up little girl, I guess. I didn't want to have anything to do with GIs. They wanted one thing and I didn't want anything to do with that. So she had to work at it. But anyway, talked me into it, and we met and went bowling, and he had probably the best bowling night of his life.
One of, yes.
One of the best. Would you bowl that night?
I don't know.
It was stellar. I think I bowled a 12. It was crazy.
You were nervous. You were the nervous
Yeah,
one.
I couldn't focus. It was gutter ball after gutter ball for me. Then we played pool, and again, he knocked it out of the park.
Goodness.
And I,
It was a good night for me.
yeah, I scratched. Yeah, I couldn't do anything.
Impressed.
Yeah, he impressed for sure. And let's see. So that's how we met. And probably what, 4 or 5 months after we met,
So, yeah.
I had just graduated high school. He got orders to Italy for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So we had about 4 months under our belt when we went into a long distance relationship. Really, when I left, I didn't have a whole lot of hope in that,
Yeah.
but obviously it worked out. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. So you started that long distance communication 4 months after meeting?
Yes.
Did I get that right?
yeah, because
Wow.
I graduated high school and I actually had 2 years of scholarships to pay for my first years of college. So I stayed
Okay.
here.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So we literally, started our 2 year long distance relationship.
So guy with the rep, quote
Yeah,
unquote.
quote unquote. Yeah. Turned out
Has
to be
a
a really
stellar
nice guy.
night.
Yeah. Had a stellar night.
You woo her for 4 months and then you split.
yes.
Yeah. So
Came,
were you married at that when you left? You weren't married yet.
no.
No.
Okay.
That would have been
Yeah.
quick
Like,
time.
man, I was like, yeah.
You knew.
So
Ty's really knocking down all the pins.
I came back about mid tour over there for a temporary duty assignment.
Yeah.
We spent a few months in Tucson, and I proposed. So
Nice.
Yeah. I got, it happened to be over my spring break. So I got a bus ticket to Tucson to go see him. And he proposed while I went to see him.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's interesting because you went long distance right away after 4 months, which, and I think a lot of military couples are going to understand this question I'm going to ask you. How do you maintain that? Like, what did you guys do? And I'm sure there were many different opportunities where you were gone and you're at home. How did you maintain that communication? How did you keep it strong in your marriage? And
They weren't married.
well, so even at that time before you were married and then into marriage with other deployments, how did you keep that communication intact? And I'm sure it was a work in progress, but what were some good tools you guys used?
Ooh, so remember this was in 1995. So this was
The 1900s.
yeah, right.
There's cell phones?
1900s.
Yeah.
There were no cell phones. How much was your long distance bill
way
for an
too much.
international bill? Yeah.
So I would have to go down to didn't have a phone in the house either.
In
It's
Italy.
too expensive over there. So I would go on base to the common area and use a payphone.
Wow.
So we had maybe once a month phone calls for that 2 years that he was gone.
Okay.
So we really didn't know each other when we got married. He
Yeah.
came back after the 2 years. We got married, didn't know each other. Funny story, the first time we went grocery shopping together, I remember we were standing in the canned vegetable aisle, and I'm like, okay, so what vegetables do you like? And he said, French cut green beans. I said, what else? Canned corn. Okay, what else? That was it, guys. That was it. That was all. Like no carrots, no.
And
No
they were
peas.
canned. And it's funny that he said canned.
Right.
Is
That
that-
was it.
yeah.
Yeah. So he's in 20 a lot years, he's grown his vegetable taste, but that was it.
Yeah, no longer canned, right? Because you grow a garden and it's nice and fresh.
But yeah, our courtship was 2 years of once
Yeah.
a month phone calls.
That's amazing.
That's a military long distance courtship.
Now, what about once you all got married and all the different deployments? How did that change? Did that evolve? I imagine.
for the communication.
communication piece, yeah.
For sure. So
Communication got more accessible.
Yeah.
From the deployed locations, we went from the morale calls where it was monitored, and you had 10 minutes, and somebody would come on the line and said, "Your time is up."
Wow.
Wow.
yeah,
Cut you off.
And, yeah,
it did. You
And
would hear a
then-
recording. You have 1 minute remaining. It's like, oh, okay, well, this and this happened at school for the kids. This and this happened, and you just try to.
and then all the way up to the last deployment that I had been on was 2019. So we had Skype, we had, you could talk just about every day.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
very,
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi calling.
Yes, so
Yeah.
it's evolved so much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you with the communication and the evolution of communication. So I'm thinking of younger couples maybe
Mhm.
in those times when communication is very short. What would you say is the most important things to be able to communicate? Because you don't want to waste a lot of that with, oh, I got my nails done, and like, oh, maybe that's important. But I'm just saying, like, if you have limited time, what would you say to those couples? Like, you need to talk about this, this, and this.
Mm.
I would say, most importantly would be the sincere, I miss you,
Oh, yeah.
um, to show concern about the kids, the family, how things are
Of
going,
course.
well-being, the kids can wear on her at home as well. So
You bring up a great point, because I think early on in our marriage, we didn't communicate that well-being piece very well, I don't think.
Yeah.
In fact, I think we hid it from each other,
Oh,
thinking we were protecting each other.
that makes sense.
Good point. Yeah.
You feel a very big responsibility as a military wife, right? That I'm going to put up this armor, and I'm not going to tell him that I had a bad day, or the kids were acting up, or this or that broke in the house. Because he's got enough to worry about wherever he's at or whatever he's doing,
Mhm.
right? I need to not let him worry about that,
That makes sense.
And I'm sure you had the same. You don't want to worry me about.
yeah, the conditions and
Yeah.
where I might be going
Yeah.
or stuff like that.
So-
Your introduction was kind of caught me, and I never really thought about it, but the kids acting out at school as well. There's
Hmm.
never crossed my mind.
Yeah, we see a lot of that. So would you say, because we've heard that not just in military, but also just in the whole communication piece of marriage is, be careful not to dump on your spouse. So what would be a healthy balance? Because, I could understand not dumping on your spouse because you're each going through stressful times, you being apart, you having the load. What would be healthy?
I think it's important to be intentional. And I think if you have time in the preparation phase, because sometimes in advance, right, before a deployment, communicate with each other about what you want to share, what you want to know, right?
Okay.
And your time's going to be limited in some of those phone calls. That there's not going to always be times
Mm-hmm.
that he's going to be able to call, every day or once a week. There's going to be times where there's limitations
Mm-hmm.
on the opportunities to call. But what kind of things do you want me to share with you? What kind of things, if our time is limited, what do you want to know about the kids? And she's going to kill me. But do you want to know that she shoplifted Tic Tacs?
All right. Who did?
Do you want to know, whatever instance, do you want to know these things? Do you want to know, things that happened at school? Do you want to know what things, right?
Yeah, I would say it's good to share your struggles, but be careful not to make it kind of a gripe session.
Yeah,
You know.
that's good.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. This is so helpful.
Well, you think about like the conversations, being proactive, like planning the conversations before. I love that because you're being intentional about your communication and what you're going to talk about when you guys do talk, compared to not having a plan whatsoever. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in doing that, is intentionally planning that time to what are we going to communicate on the limited amount of time that we do have together on the phone when we're worlds apart.
Yeah.
So good.
What you mentioned the kids and stealing the Tic Tacs. Which daughter was that? No, you don't have to say.
Let's just say she took them back and she paid for
Okay,
them.
there you go. Way to go. It's a good teaching moment, right?
Yep.
So you have 3 daughters.
Yes.
And do you guys feel comfortable giving their names and telling us a little bit about them? Yeah.
Sure. So we have Kaylee, and she is happily married now. They're all grown adults now. We have Kaylee, Ashley, and Brianna. And, you know, every deployment was different for every child. Depends on their age as to what impact it had on them. You know, and when they were younger, it didn't, you know, I think it was harder on us to worry about, is she going to remember what daddy looks like? Is she going to remember, you know, and I'm going to tell you, as a spouse, you have that thought too. Am I going to remember what his hand feels like to hold it? Am I going to know which one of those green suits is him when he gets off the airplane?
We all look the same coming off the airplane.
Yeah. It looks like a whole bunch of, you know, G.I. Joes getting off the airplane. They all look the same. But I know his walk when he gets off. Yep, that one's him.
Yeah.
But, you know, you think those things. Is he going to remember? Are they going to remember him? But as they got older, they participated a lot more. Just like as our marriage, you know, grew with each deployment, they grew with each deployment. And they started participating with other kids of families that were deployed, and they would have, you know, I started participating as a key spouse further into our marriage, and I would have get-togethers with other spouses of the deployed family members, and the girls would lead kids activities with the other kids.
Neat.
And so just kind of support the other kids too. So that was a neat thing to watch them kind of take care of the other kids.
Yeah.
That's one probably of many resources provided by the military families. Is that true? So why don't you share with our listeners, Lisa and Tye, how important do you think doing that is for a spouse that's back at home? Being a part of the key spouse. Yeah.
I can tell you that those spouses that came to the house and joined into those activities spoke to the deployed members, and then I heard about, you know, what they did at my house, you know, kind of deal. So I mean, it made an impact anyway. And then I know I was deployed a few times during holidays, during the Christmas season and stuff, and so they would all bring a toy, box it up, and send it over to us, so we'd all have toys to play with for Christmas. So
you guys had toys to play with.
Yeah. Yep, we would have the that was one of my
It's like kids again, huh?
Yeah. We're children.
yeah. I tell everybody bring just a toy, and I would have the kids make Christmas cards or whatever, and we would just do great big care packages. That was one of our, you know, you ask how we communicate. It's stuff like that too. You know, you pull together care packages for them, and the kids would make cookies and make Christmas cards or holiday cards. And
that's so neat.
Different ways to connect.
Like you said, you heard about what was happening at your house.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's also comforting for the husbands that are away, knowing that there's a support system around not only their wife, but their children. I'm sure that's important.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about parenting. I'm sure that was quite a journey having, you know, you mentioned a little bit about that, but Lisa, what did you do as a mom, as a military mom? Here you're at home with the girls. What did you do to keep your family strong, your kids strong, your family stable while Tye was gone? And then the second question is, Tye, what was your role in nurturing and loving and just being there for your daughters? Like, what did you say when you had a chance to talk to them on the phone, you know, from a dad perspective? So what did you guys do as a married couple to keep your marriage strong, your family strong with the parenting and being at home and all that good stuff?
So I think a lot of it is to kind of build up your relationship before you leave, you know, kind of get as close as you can before you part. I know one time I did the Build-A-Bears for all the girls.
Oh.
And you can record the message.
Yeah.
So she...
love it.
I did that for each one, personalized message, put it, you know, a little heartbeat, whatever.
It's beautiful.
give it to them before I left, and then she heard them each night when they went to bed.
Yep. Over and over every night. I hear, "Good night, baby girl. I love you."
Yeah.
Over and over. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it.
So I think a big thing, you know, if you're consistent in your parenting pre-deployment, the adjustment after deployment isn't as hard, right? So for example, if you're parenting, let me start over. If you're consistent pre-deployment and your kids never have to wonder if the answer is going to be different between what mom would say and what dad would say,
Yeah.
the adjustment when dad does come home from a deployment isn't different. It's not as hard of a reintegration kind of process. So when dad comes home, dad doesn't feel, I don't think, that adjustment, that wonder, well, you know, what would mom say in this situation? You know,
Yeah.
I've been gone for 2 months. I don't know what mom would do. So as long as you stay consistent in your parenting messages and your parenting styles, which is kind of how we approach things. So I hope you never felt that difference when you came home.
Yeah. No.
I think as long as you
That's
stay
good.
consistent in your parenting styles. So I think that, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah,
Try to
so
stay consistent.
Basically, like if you're with the teenage years, curfew isn't at
Curfew is
10
still
with mom.
curfew. Right.
Dad's home now. I get to stay out till midnight.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
that.
You don't
Yeah.
change those
Dad's
things.
gone now.
Or vice
Does that
versa.
change the rules? No.
No, it doesn't. You still have to go to bed on time. You still have to eat your dinner before you get dessert. You
Yeah.
still the same rules.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we did have 2 Christmases when he was gone over Christmas because mom got sad and bought extra presents. So too many. Santa's going to come twice.
Yeah.
You know, you may have a couple of extra things.
Yeah, you
right?
could pivot, right?
Yeah.
Leave
But-
it for minor adjustments.
Well, having that consistency in parenting is good because you wouldn't want to like come home to like kids you don't know. You
Wild
know?
child.
Yeah.
It's like, who is this? You know, like,
Yeah.
yeah. You know,
Here's hair dyed. You know, well,
Yeah.
tattoos. I don't know. That might happen anyway.
And I think it was important too,
Yeah.
as I did reach out, you know, you talked about the kids in school too. We always reached out to the school counselors and gave them a heads up too before every deployment and
that's
said,
good.
hey, you know, just so you know, dad's going to be deploying on this day. So in case anything happens. And it was really great because in D3, every school that they were in, you know, be it Widefield High School or Sproul Junior High, they would enroll the kids in different programs that they would have for specific to military
Military programs.
kids. Yeah. So
Okay.
they would acknowledge the kids. They would pull them into, they had military specific programs for each age group kind of thing.
Nice.
And they would acknowledge the deployment piece for them and support the kids in different
That's
ways.
really neat.
So,
Yeah.
Love that.
That's awesome. Lisa, did you ever struggle with identity? Being that, you know, as a mom and like just your identity, you as a woman? Because I know you're by trade a nurse, but when did that come into role play? But did you struggle with identity initially?
My identity as a military wife?
Yeah, as a military wife, like where do I fit in all this? My husband's doing this, I'm a mom, but
So I will tell you that my grandpa was an Army recruiter. And so my mom was a single parent. We lived with my grandparents. So I grew up knowing military blood.
okay. Yeah.
And so the day that I met him, my grandpa was so happy. Just like I brought him home and he was so proud, just like over the moon, like another military man.
Military
So-
man. Yeah.
I knew kind of, you know, what I thought I had an idea of what I was getting into, but and I'm going to try not to cry. But so June 1st is his last day in the military. And 34 years, I am so proud of everything that he's ever done and all of his accomplishments and everything that he's done. Every time we have, like we go to any kind of function for his work or anytime I'm at any of his, like any get-togethers with anybody that works for him or with him, they always make it a point to come up to me and tell me what kind of a man he is. I mean, and I know what kind of a man he is, but they make it a point to come up to me and tell me this guy, right? It's, do you know how hard he works? Do you know, like, even when he was deployed, his first sergeant or his commander, whoever, would call me and say, you know, Tye's real A team. You know, I even had one of his bosses call me one time and say, I've got several guys coming home early, Lisa. Tye's not one of them because I need him there. And it's like, don't call me and tell me people are coming home early and Tye doesn't get to come home early.
From
But
there, yeah.
thanks for telling me he works hard, you know, but I am so proud of him. I am so proud of everything he's done. And I'm so proud to be an Air Force wife.
Yeah.
And so do I question my identity? No, I'm proud to be his wife. I'm proud of him and proud of everything he's done.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so awesome to hear. So Air Force, your retirement date is
June 1st, this
Sunday, right?
Yeah.
And how many years again?
Be 33 years, 9 months
33 years, 9 months. How many days and hours?
to the day.
Okay.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yep.
Man. And I know there's a lot of jarring that goes around between different, Army, Air Force. I mean, what's been a fun experience with you?
It's like brothers. You can pick on them, but nobody else can.
Yeah.
Kind of deal. So, I'm sorry I cut you off. What?
No, so like, do you have any like classic military jokes that you have with your other brothers of different branches, or any jarring that you've done?
So being after active duty, I joined the reserves, and so the reserves kind of takes everybody that gets tired of moving around with the active duty and gives them a home. You know, so I've been here for 25 years.
Yeah.
I work with every branch. There's a lot of Army in my shop. There's a lot of Marines in my shop. A fair amount a little bit of Navy. I've worked with Coast Guard. Space Force is new. I haven't worked with them in my shop yet.
Yeah.
But I would say probably the first story that comes to mind is I had a new Marine, younger kid, and he showed up, and as soon as we found out he was Marine, we asked him what his favorite flavor or favorite crayon was.
Okay.
Without missing a beat, he said red. That's his favorite flavor.
His favorite flavor is red.
So Marines, they just chew on crayons, and they just
That is funny.
Yeah.
They're called jarheads, right?
Jarheads.
Yeah. And what are nicknames for Air Force for you guys?
Wingnut,
Okay. What about Navy?
squid,
Army?
Grunt.
grunt,
Grunt?
ground pounder.
You can
Trying to
trouble.
yeah.
No,
But
there
it's all
are people who are
brothers.
listening right now
Yeah.
and they're actually answering for you. Like, no.
Right.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Air Force.
Yeah.
Chair Force.
Yeah,
right.
Chair Force was.
Chair Force.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
help field conditions for Air Force is what, air conditioned, whatever, fill in the blank.
Need batteries for the remote.
Yeah.
That's so good.
They
Yeah.
all jab at the Air Force.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great, man. Thanks for sharing that with us. One other thing I want to really talk about, I think it's really important, especially for those in the military community, is emotional health, mental health, and having that resilience. We know that in society today, there's a high suicide rate amongst veterans, people coming out who are currently serving, civilians. What have you guys done to stay emotionally healthy, to be resilient in I'm sure you've had some very, very tough, challenging situations all these years. You don't get to 29 years without challenges. But what have you all done, and what would you say to help maybe other couples who maybe struggle with keeping that emotional resilience while doing the military life?
Be open and honest with one another. Don't be afraid to talk. The harder conversations are probably the more important ones.
Yeah.
So have them.
And I think you know your spouse the best. I think he doesn't have a lot of stress. He just isn't a high stress guy. But like if he doesn't sleep well, I know that about him. I know, okay, you're stressed. You're not sleeping well. Do you know that? What's going on with you? What's happening? I recognize something is different about you. Let's talk.
Yeah.
You know?
Know the tells. Yeah.
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
able to read their body language.
Yeah. Identifying what's a healthy pattern, what's not a healthy
Mhm.
pattern, and then
Mhm.
talking about it. Was there ever a time where you all had to seek counsel outside of each other, like professional counseling or anything?
We haven't. I would say, there's been times where some of our friends have come to, like, there's times that some people that work with him have come to me because they didn't want to talk to their spouse. And so we've talked.
Oh, okay.
And me being a nurse, I can direct them to resources. And there's just some community resources out there that people can be directed to. Veteran hotlines and such that they can.
I was going to
follow
ask,
with.
well, yeah, what would be some resources besides veteran hotlines?
Your military organization will also have a lot of resources
Okay.
for mental health is a huge one because it is such a problem. I've had to refer many people to those agencies. You got
Okay.
Military One Source, which is open to all branches. You've got the hotlines now, which I believe is 988. Dial that, and they'll get you help.
That's good.
So
I have one last question.
Sure,
I
yeah.
think it's important because this is our foundation of our podcast. Your spiritual practices, your faith that have anchored you. How has that benefited you in your years of serving?
I wish I had been more planted in my faith when I was deployed. I think it would have been a huge benefit. I still consider myself as a fairly young follower Christian. We'll say that I'm lucky not to have failed more than I did because of faith. So I would say if you don't have a lot of faith, find it. It's going to help you a lot.
Foundational.
Yeah.
And we've talked about, there are way more resources now that I think would be beneficial to a couple through deployment, like the Bible app. There, you could do a study together as you're deployed.
Yeah.
I think, you could listen to podcasts, and you could, talk about the podcast back and forth. You could, listen to a podcast and text back and forth or email back and forth kind of thing about it afterwards. Or, there's a lot of resources out there now that I think weren't necessarily available to us back in the day. I say that a lot. We've got some time. We've aged ourselves a lot, I think, in the last 30 minutes.
I don't think I've ever been deployed or mobilized or where I didn't have a chaplain available either. So that's always another resource.
Yeah. And you can attend services wherever you're at.
Yes.
They provide those avenues so you can keep your faith strong if those
Yes.
who want to utilize that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've never been in field conditions deployed, kind of, but I know, or I guess I'm pretty certain that they have their version as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And I would encourage the I guess we'll say stateside spouse as well to stay engaged in your church family. Stay engaged in going to church and keeping kids enrolled in their youth services as well.
Definitely.
Support.
That's what I love about our church where we attend at Restoration. We're a 60% military family in our church. And we try to make the inroad for new families coming in, living here in Colorado Springs, for them to get involved in church, to serve in church, to be a part of that church community. And I think that's crucial, especially for the spouse who's home, to do that. And then, of course, when the spouse who's deployed comes home, they have a loving church family community that they get to worship God.
Yep.
They get to have community. They get to serve each other and just be there. And so I think that's a really good point to stay locked in to that church community so that you can continue to nurture your faith and grow, and for the kiddos and, of course, the marriage itself.
Well, and our church even broadcasts our services. So you could watch, even from a deployed location, you could watch restoration service online as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So
And we know
there's
people who
another-
do.
Yeah.
another plug for restoration.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
deployed, you can watch restoration service.
Yeah. And listen to the Favorite Marriage podcast.
Listen to the
Keep
favorite marriage
showing up
podcast. Yep, keep showing.
Far and close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you tune in this weekend to Restoration Church, Jeannine and I have the opportunity to share all 3 services on Saturday and the 2 on Sunday. And if you take a peek at the Sunday Sunday morning service at 9 a.m. Was it the 9 a.m.?
10:45.
10:45.
10:45, you'll be able to hear Tye and Lisa's testimony as well, and other testimonies this weekend. So, and then you get to hear us talk a little bit about marriage. And so we're excited about that little plug for this weekend. Couple final things, or one final thing for you guys. So you're sitting down, having coffee with the military family. Maybe they're new in this journey. Maybe they're right smack dab in the middle of the journey. What advice, what wisdom, what you coming from a perspective of a sage now, right? What advice, what wisdom would you give that military couple, that husband and wife, on how to keep their marriage and family strong?
Well, I think from the spouse's perspective, I would say to that spouse to remember that God chose you for this battle. Just like God chooses the service member for their battle, right? He chooses the soldier. He chose you as well. He chose the spouse for the spouse's mission. God chose you to keep the home together. He chose you to make sure the children are thriving. The job of the military spouse is easily overlooked. Sometimes I think they feel like, I'm just here. He's the one out there in the field. He's the one sleeping on the ground, or, he's the one getting shot at, or whatever. I'm not the important one, but God chose you. God chose you for a reason. You've got an important job.
For sure.
So don't downplay that. You've got a pretty important role in this whole thing.
Yeah. It's a high calling.
It is, really.
It's a very high calling.
Yeah, we've all got a purpose, and I don't like it when people say I'm not a very good military spouse, or I'm not. Yeah, you are. It's an important job. So that's my key message to a military spouse.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll build on her as well. So without the military or the at-home spouse, I can't clear my mind to do my job where I'm deployed. So being in a high tempo or, high tempo area, working long hours, really not the greatest conditions and stuff. I have no worries about what's going on at home. My kids are fed, they're going to school, the bills are paid. I know what I'm coming home to, kind of deal. So it takes a lot of the stressors off of the deployed member.
That's good.
And it's for the deployed member. I've seen a lot of relationships and marriages get ruined because of temptations and stuff. So make sure you're staying true to yourself, stay true to your spouse, and just know that evil's looking for the weak, and if you're weak, try to stay strong. Dig into your faith. Use your partners, your deployed partners, and just don't give in to that temptations.
Yeah. And do exactly what your shirts say. Keep showing up. Show up for your marriage. Show up for your kids.
That's right. Amen.
Show up for the Lord, and definitely because God shows up for us every single day.
Amen.
Yeah, some great stuff. Any final thoughts, comments, Jeannine, before we wrap up? I mean, we can probably talk all night, but yeah.
That's
Very,
good.
very
Thank
beautiful.
you guys for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on the show today. We believe this message, as it goes out, it's going to touch and it's going to minister and help a lot of couples out there. And we look forward to hearing more about your journey. Maybe we can have you on our show for a round 2 sometime in the future. We'd love to do that. But yeah, thanks for being here with us today. We all know that no no marriage is exactly the same, right? Where there's no one size fits all type of marriage. We have career marriages, military marriages, there's ministry marriages. I mean, when you talk about marriage, it's so many different dynamics and moving parts within a married couple. And so we hope that today's episode would be an encouragement to you all today. If you enjoyed what you hear today, especially if you are a military family, military couple, share this podcast, share this episode with those whom you feel this would benefit. I think there was a lot of great nuggets and a lot of wisdom that was shared today. So we'd love for you to, to like and to share this podcast with as many people as you can. And so if you have not have an opportunity to like or subscribe to the Favorite Marriage Podcast or write us a review on one of our podcast platforms, that'd be great to do that, because that helps us get the message out and to reach more married couples. And so with all of that, we'd like to say thank you for tuning in to the Favorite Marriage Podcast, and we pray that you would experience God's favor
on your forever.